harmonizing with nature. With over 4 decades of changing lives, your self-discovery archaeologist, get ready to be the best of you with your host, Beverly Zimet.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Beverly Zimet Show, where being that best you keeps getting easier with every guest. My guest today is calling in from Alberta, Canada, and her name is Tara Brown. Welcome to the show.
Hi, I'm super excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure. So, what goes on up there in Alberta, Canada?
Well, not a lot right now.
Kind of like the rest of the world, right?
Hiding. Yeah. Everybody's still hiding pretty well. It's a crazy time.
It is.
I live right next to the biggest mall in the country.
Oh, you
West
do?
End Mall. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's my little famous thing right now.
Okay, so this little famous thing you got up there, this mall, is it open?
Yeah, it is open. Yeah,
Oh, wow.
it's opened, and they have arrows, and they have sanitation places, and you have to wear a mask, and there's lines outside the stores, but it is open. They couldn't keep it closed. It's too huge. They had it closed for about a month, and like I used to walk by, and it was just creepy because like this overfilling parking lot that's usually overfilling with cars and stuff is just empty.
Right.
It was definitely surreal, that's for sure.
Yeah. It's interesting how people begin to adjust, right?
Oh yeah.
But there are some things that they just don't want to adjust to. So it's like, okay, we're going to make this happen. We're going to do this one way or another. We're just going to do it, right?
Yeah.
So again, we look at change, and what is change all about? Change happens whether you go with it or not, right? And so compensating and your belief systems, the discovery of you. This is, what I think with this whole pandemic and everything that's gotten just crazy, globally, is an opportunity to really begin to take a look at what's going on internally with the person of who you are and getting
That's my
to,
favorite kind of change, actually.
yeah.
Like I get kind of giddy when I think about self-development and self-growth, and I went from such a down place to such a good place
Mhm.
that self-growth is self-change is probably the most funnest thing that I do.
Well, you know what? It gets me up every morning and gets me going, right?
Yeah.
Because and that's the show, right? Being that best you that you can be. So, what's the first question I ask every morning? What can I do today to become a better me,
Yeah.
right? And
What can I
this
do today to live my best life?
exactly. And that's what this show is all about, and that's what, like I say, what keeps me going. And I enjoy it. I love meeting new people. I love listening to new stories. I love hearing about people and how the world impacts them, but more importantly, how they impact the world. So if Tara Brown can impact the world and really get a driving message home today to the audience, what would that be?
It would be to live your best life, to go through the journey that you need to go through to do what you want to do and be who you want to be, and have the courage to do that.
Okay. So how does that look in Tara's life? Who
In
is she?
Tara's
What makes her tick? Come on. Come on. Let's go.
in Tara's life, that means so what I am is I'm a mindset coach, and I got that from a bunch of years of crap living, a bunch of years of depression, being suicidal, teenage momism, abusive relationships, poor self-esteem, lack of any belief in anything about myself. And I really don't want people to feel that way. I've been there, and I really want to share ways for other people not to be there. So you look like you have a question. So,
Okay, I didn't want to interrupt if you had a thought going there,
no,
but
go ahead.
okay, so what was your biggest aha moment coming from that type of background, coming from that thought period, that feeling, that uncomfortability, shall we say? What was the aha moment that Tara said, "I'm done. I'm done with this."
Well, what happened is through my depression and a really horrible relationship that I was in, I lost my children. They got taken away from me,
Ooh,
and
that's a big
yeah,
one.
that
That's a
was
wake up call, right?
and it was the one thing that it was like, no, no, this isn't going to happen. I have to change. I have to do something, be something different, because I can deal with anything else in the world, but I could not deal without my children. So that was my aha moment. That was the moment that everything shifted. And then before that, it was like a lot of working towards it. I did a lot of The Secret. I did a lot of, some reading, and I used to read Sylvia Browne a lot, like all these little things that I used to do, but nothing really said, okay, get into it, until that happened. And it was like,
Right,
oh, well, this is it. This is the thing.
right. How old were they at that time?
They were 11, 5, and 4.
Okay. It's interesting how children can make a difference in an impact of change, right? I had a similar, story, and my kids were all under the age of 5. So they were like 3, 4, and 5, actually. And it's like, wow, what do I do here? Where do I go from this? This is not my life. I wasn't in an abusive relationship or anything like that, but I was in a position where I had no identity. And for being the little rebel, outgoing, you name it, danger, nothing stopped me, right? All of a sudden, I had found myself in a situation that was so foreign to me. And I can relate to what you're saying. You have these depression. I fought depression as a child. I grew up second oldest of 11, farm country, mid Iowa, a really, 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 really long time ago. Because I grew up in the 50s, okay? And there's things that weren't said, things that you just didn't do, but there was those still that questioning, why, and so I was always striking out. I was always looking for adventure. I was always going against the grain. And then all of a sudden I found myself, when I went against the grain, in a situation with marriage and 3 children. Bang, 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 right? It's like, wait a minute, this is not my identity. This isn't who I am. So you get those wake up calls. But my children became my driving force. And so what you're saying to me here is, all of a sudden your children became your driving force to make a change,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
They had always been like, everything I did was to fight to get out of that situation, to get out of that life for my children. But I just wasn't quite strong enough. Like at the time, I just wasn't. I just didn't believe in myself enough. I just wasn't quite strong enough.
Right.
I just, like I was like, yeah, we're gonna do it, and then we do it, and then something happened, and it didn't happen.
Well, again, we're looking at support, or the lack of, shall we say, right? There's a huge movement going on, and has been for several years now, around helping women get out of abusive situations, to get into an advancement and a forward movement, and having that support that wasn't there so much. And so when you look at that, where do you stand with that support system?
I always had a strong support system. I just didn't believe in it. I didn't believe in them. I didn't believe in myself. Like I have a good family, and there are some. Like I did go to a shelter and everything else. More, you have to start. That's the start is you have to start believing in yourself. If you
Okay.
don't believe in yourself, there's nobody who's going to be able to help you, because you just don't believe that that you're worthy, B, that it's going to work, you just don't believe it. So the first thing you have to do is start to believe in your own strength, and your own ability to be better than that, to be more than that, right?
Right.
And then once you do that, then you'll be able to see the supports, like then you can see your friends and your family, and you can see, like, you can see, yes, they will help you, they will have your back. Like, I knew that deep down, but he threatened them or threatened me or whatever he said at the time, and
Right.
I just didn't believe in any of that, right?
Well, it's interesting, and I think what a lot of people don't really even understand is how do you end up in a situation like that, and it's not like an instantaneous thing. It's one little thing after another. You compensate, you start lying to yourself, you start saying, well, making up excuses and all kinds of things, and all of a sudden you wake up one day and you're like, how did I get here?
Yeah,
Right? And
yeah.
that loss of self is very critical, and to get it back because it's been so instilled and so inbred and so um, continuous that all of a sudden that belief in who you once were is so foreign. It's like, how do I get it back? Right?
In my case, there was no belief. I had depression issues since I was 10 years old. I was The first time I thought about suicide, I was 11 years old, and I thought about pills and stuff. Like, there is no identity to have. I just didn't have it. I didn't have any self-esteem, any self-worth, and that was my whole life, right? So until I decided that I needed to do better for my children and for myself. And then I started working on it, and I started seeing the value of myself, and seeing the value of what I've done for the world, and knowing that, what, maybe I screwed up, but I'm a good parent. I love my kids. I show them all kinds of love, starting with that, and then just moving forward, but
Right.
like, for a lot of people, yeah, they have to regain themselves, but for a lot of people, they just have to find themselves.
And right there is the key. It's finding the self. And when we look at how the world has changed with the social distancing, as they put it, right, that separation, the separation from everything and everyone, it's like, wow, how have we lived our life separating from our own essence, right? And now having the opportunity to say, wait a minute, this is about the self. It's about putting me first, right? Because if your cup isn't full, you
And you can't.
can't give more to someone else than what you've given to yourself, right? So when people say, oh, well, yeah, I love my kids more than, the world, I love my kids more than, really? How much do you love yourself,
That's
right?
right. Right.
Right? And so,
I became the best parent when I started loving who I was, and when I started putting myself first. I became the best parent when I created boundaries, and I didn't let everybody else push me around. That's when I became the best parent. When
well,
I when I
that is great advice right there. That is great advice. When I became, when I became, yeah. How'd that feel when you started? Was it scary? Was it exciting? Was it a little bit of both? What?
Once I started, and I really got into it, I started believing in myself, like, that I could, like, I started becoming self-aware. I could see where I needed to go, and I've always been really smart. I've always been really, even though I didn't notice, I always, like, researched and looked for things if I wanted the answer. If I loved it, yeah, if I loved the situation enough, I loved the material enough, I would just devour it.
Uh-huh.
And self-esteem became, or self-growth became, one of those subjects. It just became like reading everything, and going and I did this course and that course, and everything I did just to learn about myself. And I became really self-aware, like really super self-aware. And people would be like, no, you're not doing that. And I'm like, no, I know what I need to do. I know where I am. I know that I have to create boundaries, and I know that I have to forgive myself, and I know I have to do these things. I don't know how to do these things, but I know what I have to do. And it was kind of like, yeah, it was a wake up wake an awakening experience for sure.
Right. You touched on something that's very critical. I don't know how. I know what I need to do. I know what has to happen. How do I do it? And that's application, and that
Mhm.
was one of the things for me, was application and, and working through it. And I teach a lot of workshops and different things like that. And went to a lot of lectures and did the same thing. You read a lot of books and, about how to make the change, what to make the change, where the spiritual aspect was. I'm telling you, back when I started my journey in '74, there wasn't what there's available today.
No, no.
And one book that really impacted my life was by Robert Ringer. And at the time, he was a #1 New York bestseller. And the name of the book was Looking Out for Number One. Now, 1974 is a long time ago.
And they didn't do a lot of self-help
No, well, there
stuff then.
wasn't. The only thing that was
No.
available was psychiatry or psychology,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And then that was a stigma. Because if you
yeah.
went to one of them, now you had to live with this big stigma, like,
You're crazy.
exactly. Exactly. Well, you know what?
Uh,
We're all crazy to a degree. And
yeah.
sometimes I think it's the craziness and that keeps us sane, right?
But it's
Yeah,
a different time now, and it's okay to be a little crazy. It's okay to be a little weird. My
right.
whole life, my whole family, teaching my kids, it's like, you're weird. That's fine. That's the way it's supposed to be,
I know.
right?
I love it.
So
You want to
then,
be weird
so
with
then when
me?
they get called it, yeah. So when they get called it, they're like, yeah. And your point is,
Right.
hmm
Yeah. And that I think was one of the things that kind of drove me into being an introvert because growing up till I started school, I was very extrovert. And then, because I had intuitive um, responses, I knew things that people didn't, but I thought everybody was that way until I went to school. Then it was like, oh, you're weird, you're this, you're that, right? And I was small, so I was picked on a lot, I was teased a lot. So I grew up in that fighting and that just, and as you grow and mature and discover that truth of who you are, it's like, wait a minute, who was I fighting all of this time? Right here. Right? And when the realization becomes your reality and the change and what happens. And I got so hungry for it. Like you said, you just inhaled it and you just inhaled it and you just inhaled it. For me, school was the hardest thing ever. To read a book, are you kidding me? Right? You had to read these novels of whatever. I don't even know the names of them, but they were like books this thick, right? I hated reading. When I picked up that book, I bought it. I can remember where I bought it. I bought it in a Target store, and it was like on a clearance thing, right? And it was just a little paperback, and it, but it just caught my eye, and I think I paid $2 for it, right? And it laid on my nightstand, and I picked it up. I started to read it. I couldn't even get through the first page, which was only a half a page of this book that was like 3 inches by 5, right? So it wasn't a big book. And I couldn't even get through the paragraph. And then it laid there. I picked it up again. And then it laid there and I picked it up again. And this went on for about 6 months. And I picked it up one night and I couldn't put it down. And it really began to make sense, right? And it's like, wow, it's explaining things that I felt, looking out for number one. Because you know what? When it all boils down to it, at the end of the day, who do you have?
Yeah,
Right
that's
here.
right. You
That's
you
right.
have to depend on yourself because you are the person that should always have your own back, right?
Right.
You should always be your own cheerleader, and you should always be your own mentor. You
Right.
just be there for yourself.
Right. And when it's foreign and now with everything that's available, it's kind of interesting, the volume that's available can sometimes be overwhelming as
Exactly.
when there wasn't enough, but at the same time, it still goes back into that application. And
Mhm.
that was one of the things for me that was critical. That it's like, okay, all the workshops and everything that I went to, I left and I felt good. It's like, whoa, okay, right? And then it was like, all right, now what do I do? How do I do it?
Exactly.
right?
Exactly. And
So
yeah. And that's why, like, everything, that's how my dream became, I guess, is
right,
that I spent all this time just researching and looking and trying to find and being how where's the answer? Like, how do I do this? So when I figured it out finally, I was like, I don't want anybody else to have to do this. I don't want
right.
like, you're right, there's so much information on the internet that it becomes overwhelming. There's like, yeah, I can look up a blog about anything, but really, it's just telling you what you already know.
Right. It's
You
just
need to,
recycling
yeah,
information, right?
exactly, right. There's no how about it. So yeah, so that's why I'm here. I'm here to help people with the how, right?
To get
To
it
get
to put that into action, and that's great because it is so needed. And that was one of the things that I sought the most of, is that how, in that application. Okay, obviously I need to figure out how to apply what I know, because knowledge is, it's priceless, but it's not worth a dime if you don't apply it,
right.
right? And so, over the years, I've been able to develop things because we talk about the emotional trauma that is attached to what leads you into depression, what leads you into the not knowing, what leads you into the loss of your identity, the loss of self esteem, self value, self worth, self limitations, self fears, all of these things about the self, right? So when you begin to recover and start to understand who this self is, how do you become that self? How do you become that expression of that self when all of a sudden all this stuff in the background is playing, right? Yeah, but
Mhm.
remember back then when that happened? If you're going to do this here, oh my gosh, this mind
So
playing,
many.
and you said you were a mindset coach, right?
I am.
And it is so key to understand what goes on in this mind.
Hmm. Hmm.
And because it's what's going to make or break you, right? And it's all attached to the feeling, which is the charge of the emotion.
The first step is to pay attention to your thoughts. I
Yes.
remember when I was trying to figure out a way to change my thoughts, and to somebody, or I read somewhere that you just got to tap your head and say, okay, stop, and then rewind, and then play. So give yourself those cues that, oh yes, okay, that was a bad thought. I That's not what I want to do anymore. So
Right.
let's just retry that, right? Do over, kind of thing. Like, and then that's basically your starting step. That's your first step in
Is that
anything. It's just,
recognizing what the issue is,
yeah.
right? And like over the years, what I developed techniques like what you're just saying, right? And
Mhm.
the first of the 5 steps is to recognize. If you don't recognize there's an issue, where do you go from there, right? It's like, wait a minute. Again, we're looking at what is that best self? What can I do to be the best me, right? What is it that I need to do to change what I'm not comfortable with anymore? Right? Because it starts here. So
Mhm.
recognizing it and then acknowledge, and this is where I found that was the biggest key, was acknowledging that that issue was a
Yeah.
truth. It was a truth because it became your belief system, which was your truth that you're on automatic pilot responding to. And the subconscious is like this little kid. It gets a hold of this and says, no, you can't have it. I'm keeping it. I'm keeping it. I'm keeping it. Right? Well,
And
how do you,
sometimes, yeah,
yeah,
sometimes you don't even recognize that you have these thoughts, that like they're
exactly.
like, you don't like right now I'm trying to do a lot of money mindset block, releasing blocks for money mindset, right? And like I'm like, what do you mean? I like money. Money is good. Me and money are friends. What do you mean? Like, well, no, Tara, if you and money were friends, then you'd have a lot more of it. like you have blocks, you just have to figure out what they are, right? And
Right.
that's with any kind of thing. You can what do you mean? I think I'm smart, but do you really, like, is that thought back then when you failed grade 6 science, is that still on your plate? Is that still your base belief? Because you don't really
Right.
seem like you feel like you believe that you're smart, right? You may think, consciously, yeah, sure, why not? But it's your
What's
unconscious
going
stuff.
on in that cell memory, because
Yeah.
that's your autopilot, right? And so to be able to release the autopilot, you have to acknowledge that, hey, you're right. Okay, cell, you're right. And then it's
Mm,
like, oh yeah, so right? It's kind of like that little pride thing. It's
yeah.
But at that point when you can acknowledge that as the truth, it's a false truth, but it was so instilled that it became an automatic pilot. It became that personality trait of who you are that you no longer want to be. And so the acknowledging it as being that is the truth of who I am because that is what I display. Okay, now it's time for the change. And when
Mm,
you acknowledge that, then the subconscious will let go of it because there's no conflict anymore, right? So
mm,
it's like, okay, the
yeah.
war is over. And that's when you can start to unload that stuff, right? Release what it is that you no longer want, that no longer serves the purpose, because that's not the you that you want to be. That's not the you want to portray. And when you can release that, you create a void. What are you going to do with that void? You better put something in there that you
Yeah.
want, because I'll guarantee you if you don't, the automatic thing is going to happen. It's going to dump other garbage in there. So
Mm,
that replacing is what is relevant at that point.
mm.
And so it's like, hey, I am powerful. I am change. I am, whatever, that you
Or
released, it's like, you know, so,
here is proof that I am actually smart.
right.
Instead
I
of
am
saying,
smart. I am
you know,
intelligent.
I am
Yeah,
intelligent because
I am worthy. I'm
I'm a
deserving.
mother of 4 children. I'm intelligent because I have a really hard job. I'm intelligent because I fixed that stupid microwave last week. Like,
Right,
you need, yeah. Instead of taking, you just said, yeah, you're smart, but if you don't believe it, if you don't give yourself
right. And it's
proof,
that reprogramming.
yeah,
There's a lot of talk about rewiring the brain and reprogramming. You know, to reprogram, you need to exit. It's kind of like a cassette tape. Now, there are a lot of people probably say, "What the hell is a cassette tape?" Right?
I know.
you know. So, but again, it's a movie or a belief system that keeps playing on automatic pilot, right? It's just automatic, and you need to delete it. You need to erase it so that you can now program what it is that you want.
Instead of that sad music on that cassette tape, you can reprogram that some happy music on that tape.
Exactly, because you can't have both, right?
Mm.
You
No,
know,
no.
this duality world, and I think more now than ever, we've seen a lot what real duality is all about. And when you look at the lifestyle changes, when you look at the belief system changes that are happening in the world today in just a few short months, right?
Mm.
How people's fears have taken over, how people's freedom, how people respond, how it's like, oh, see that arrow? It says go that way. Really? I want to go that way. That's shorter than this, right? So where do you buck the system? Where do you do? Where do you step in line? Where do you step out of line? Where's your boundaries? Where's other people's boundaries? It's the inner conflict as well as the exterior conflict,
Yeah.
right? And how do you follow the rules? Are you a rule breaker, a rule maker, or a rule follower, right? And there's a
Yeah.
question, right?
Yeah. You really, and the answer is this: is be true to yourself, right?
There
Like,
you go.
you know what? There's got to be a time where you just got to stop worrying about what everybody else thinks and what everybody else wants for you, because it's all about what you need and what you want for you and what you think for yourself, right?
Right.
Like, and that's where your ideal point is to be, right? Like, is I think that one of the largest over obstacles we have to overcome. I'm losing words now that I'm in my 40s, but um, one of the obstacles that we have to overcome is just not worrying about everybody else, because
Right.
we are raised to always think about what other people think.
Right. And
That's
I use this quote a lot. It doesn't matter what other people think of you. It matters what you think of you,
mhm,
right?
that's right.
And sometimes that can be a really, really hard lesson to learn, right?
Oh yes.
Because we have that fear of, well, what if somebody, what if they don't like me? Well, you know what? Let's see. There's how many billions of people in the world? I will stake my life on it. There's somebody out there that's going to like you for you.
If
Maybe
you're
it's
really not worried about it, you're probably a kind person. You're probably a good person. You're probably, someone who's not mean and vindictive, because if you're mean and vindictive, you don't care if people like you anyway, right? So if
that's
you're
true. That's
so
true.
if you're a kind person and you're a good person, then chances are most people are going to like you. So the ones that don't, is it your problem or is it their problem? Like
Right.
if 90% of the people in the world like you and everybody thinks you're fine, and then there's just one jerk who says, "Oh, you suck." Is that on you or is it on that one person? You
Right.
know what I mean?
Right. And if you like you, that's really all that matters.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And there's always room for improvement. That's why the show is called Being That Best You Can Be. Right. Is
Mm-hmm.
to really recognize the pieces and the parts that you want to make different, because you know what? There's so much out there. There's so much adventure. There's so much discovery. And to be able to discover the internal world makes the external world even more exciting. Right? Have you found that to be true on your journey? The more you discovered who Tara really is, that the world
Well,
out here changes?
well, the world becomes more possible, right? Because Tara, Tara of old was a girl who didn't do anything. She hid in her house. She was scared to be around people. She was scared to talk on the phone. She was so there was no world. My world was my little house. Now there's the world opens up, right? I've gone. The old Tara would never have hopped on a bus and gone and visited somebody that they, in by themselves, but the new Tara will. She'll hop on a bus or a plane or whatever. Like these are things that the old Tara couldn't do. So the world, yeah. I guess the answer is yes. The world has opened up for you.
There you go. And that is so true. And again, the adventure. Oh my gosh. I mean, I go back into my childhood, and we've had, class reunions and things like that. And it's like, wow. I remember going back to my 40th graduation reunion, and the kids that I went to school with, there was 100, I think 103 people in my senior class, and that was five little towns all put together, right? So we're talking middle of farm country, no man's land, right?
Mine wasn't that different.
So, so, so after 40 years, and you come back and you start looking at people's lives and where people have been and what adventures they've been on and everything. Oh my gosh, I was like totally blown away on the percentage, and it was a greater percentage of the kids that I went to high school with have never left a 50-mile radius of where they grew up. Oh, I'm thinking, I could have been one of those. Oh my gosh, I could have been one of those, but I wasn't. Thank goodness I wasn't, right? And, so again, it's that individual. And you said it best when you made the comment, everyone is concerned about what other people think. We're conditioned to think what other people think about us, what other people think is best for us. What you should be doing. Society says you do this. Society says you do that. Who the hell is this society? Right?
That's right.
My kids would get, they would, oh God, they would just get so infuriated when they say something. Yeah, but everybody else is just, who's everybody else? Right? It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, but that's what they say. It's like, who's they?
Yeah.
Right. Oh, they just hated that because it's like, here we have this general thing. Well, who are they?
Hmm.
Who is everybody else? Does anybody else matter?
Yeah.
But you know
Why
what?
does why does everybody else matter?
Yeah, who is this other
Who's
they?
who's the
Right?
person who's decided that women have to be a size zero? Who was that person and why? And
Right?
it's because we don't even know who that person is. Why has that person even been important? Like,
That's right.
yes, for sure,
That's right.
exactly.
You know, my kids can appreciate it now
Mhm.
because they don't stand in that way. They don't let others stand in their way. They don't run over people or anything like that. But they're not going to be someone that says, "Oh, that's what society says. Oh, that's what that's what who that is." It's like, this is what I say, this is what I believe, and this is the direction I'm going. You can either go with or without me. And change is that same way. We can learn a lot from change when we look around at change. Change happens with or without you,
Mm.
right? With or without you.
And
And
hopefully with, right? I mean,
well, you
nobody.
know, because you create your own change.
Yeah.
You create that change. I mean, well, look at the change that's being happening now. What role did we play in this instant stop? I mean, never in my wildest dreams, 70 years on the planet, did I ever imagine that something this drastic globally could come to an immediate halt. Just boom, you wake up one morning, life is just, and all of a sudden you wake up the next morning and everything is stopped.
Hmm.
Whoa, maybe that song, Stop the World and Let Me Off, finally came into reality because too many people believed it. Whoa, because it stopped.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
Maybe it was a wake up
stopped.
call that we just need to stop for a second and look around.
Yeah. And I believe there's a lot of truth to that. I mean, it's been years, 20 years that I know of, where there's been what people are recognizing, the awakening, it's coming, revelation is taking place. Is this the revelation? Is this the awakening?
It's definitely a strange year.
It's and those are some definitely true words. And again, it goes back to that personal viewpoint, right? It's an opportunity to say, who am I? What am I? Why am I? And where am I? And how am I? Right?
Yeah.
And to move forward with that and become that best person, that best spirit. Because you know what? The divine intelligence, God, universe, Buddha, whatever that belief system is, that higher power of whatever it is, does not make junk, does not make imperfection. We have the energy all around us. We have the knowledge and the inner knowing to make that energy an outcome of
We
what
have it
we
all.
desire. What do we do
We
with
have
it?
it. We have it all within ourselves. Like
Yeah,
there's out there, but out there, like the universe, God, Buddha, it's part of you. It's part of who you are. It's also in here, and this is what you have to tap into. You have to tap into your
right.
inner self, your inner being, your inner God, your inner strength, your inner goddess. Your
I heard something so long ago. I want to say it was either in the late 70s, early 80s, a statement that has really stayed with me all this time. It was God sat around and said, what can I do to let this human element that I'm going to put down here, in this world, and let them adventure out and see what they can make of it. But I want to let them know that I'm always here, you know, the light, the direction. I'm always here for them. Where can I put them so they'll always find me? inside. But where do we go? Where do we go? We're always looking out there, okay, God's up there. Well, is God up there? No, God's in here. God
Mhm.
is in everything, every object, every thought, everything. We were given choice. We were given a free will. Which direction you want to go on? Okay, I'm going to throw you guys down here in this duality world, right? So, what do you want to do? You want to test the waters? And it was shown to me many, many years ago when I wanted to go back to where my soul was created. And what is this whole balancing act that we're here? What is this whole duality world? And I was showing this pillar of all that is and all that isn't, right? It was luminescent, it was solid, it was everything, right? And it's like, okay. And then it's like I watched my soul come into being. It was almost like this pillar of everything that was, this energy, started to bubble, right? And just like it was boiling. And then all of a sudden, bloop, and there I was. Boom. There was this little soul of me, and it was like this little glob of whatever bouncing around. I was like, oh, well, this is interesting. Okay. And then as time grew and you took on different forms, but there was always the pillar, and then there was this pathway. It was like this golden walkway, right? Of everything. So I'm walking down this golden pathway, and it just went to eternity. It was infinity. There was never an end, right? But off to the side, it's like, okay, we have positive charges and we have negative charges. Here's your experience. You can grab pieces from this side and pieces from that side, put it together, have an experience. And when you're done with the experience, it's a growth of the soul. And then let it go, put it back out there, get back on this golden walkway, and be in that essence of pureness. Investigate, but experience, let go. What happened? We got so far removed from the pillar of that allness, that all oneness and knowing, that we forgot to let go of the experience, let go of the positive and negative attachment that created that experience, to be back in the format of all that was and all that is, to go out and experience more. We kept hanging on to the feelings of that trauma and
Mhm.
got so distant. I mean, okay, the awakening's here, get back into the light. I never really understood what that was until I had that vision of, where did I start? How did my soul come into creation? That's how it was shown to me, right? And so it's like, okay, then I'm going to make sure that wherever my pendulum is, wherever that energy force is, on a positive charge and on a negative charge, bringing it in, have this experience on all those different avenues, and say, okay, done with that one, next, and just really start to detach. And so working with what I call the little rah-rah system was that 5 steps of recognizing, acknowledging, releasing, replacing, and then accepting that new truth, that new, learn it, what we learned off of that. But let everything else go so that you can continue to grow and grow and grow and build and build and build, right? So that's what my journey has taken me through. And again, it's that application. So Tara, what you're doing here and how you've found yourself and what took you to reach that point was a driving force of a loss greater than a fear,
Mhm.
right?
It's exactly what it was. Yep,
Okay.
yep. I needed I needed them back so bad that everything that I was scared of became second base.
Exactly.
Second. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's where we need to get, is to stand in the midst of fear, dissolve it.
Well,
And
hopefully
that's
you
the
don't
change.
have to dissolve it by such a strong need. Hopefully
Exactly.
you
It's
just,
learning from other people's
yeah, yeah.
stories,
Hopefully you
right?
can learn from me and not have to lose your children to decide to do better.
Right. Or to lose, the loss
Or to lose
of anything,
of
right?
anything.
Right.
Yeah, really.
So and again, it's getting into the internalness and knowing the spirit and the essence of who you are, and then let that ripple out. Because Tara, you're doing a beautiful job here, and I'm sure your children now have a different perspective. Again, and something that people don't realize, I think, too, is when you make the changes and the shifts in you, you have a DNA,
Mhm.
and that cellular pattern has to change. So when you change your belief system, your DNA changes, and it will impact your bloodline forwards and backwards and linear. And it is interesting, all the work that I did on myself, and all the changes that happened, being able to watch 10 siblings shift was really quite interesting. And to still watch and see how some of that has shifted, to watch how my my dad was gone before some of the major stuff happened, but to watch how my mom began shifting, and some of the questions she was asking me about the energy healing work and stuff that I was doing, and stuff, the things that I helped her, because she had gone through actually two brain surgeries 25 years apart, but how she had to get back, some of her immobility, and what we did using that power of the mind. And then watching some of my aunts and uncles, talk to me about the psychic things that they had, that intuition, but they didn't know what it was. They didn't talk about it. All of a sudden now are opening up to me and saying, okay, well, tell me about this. Well, tell me about that. It's like, wow. So that ripple effect that goes into the shifting of the DNA,
Mhm.
everyone is impacted because we're all one. We're one with the universal energies, and we're one with one another. So it's about coming back into that peace, coming back into that joint, and uniting as the power force of who we are. So I want to say kudos to Tara Brown for everything that she is doing to make a difference in her life so that she can impact the lives of many. It's an honor having you on the show. It's been an honor having you in this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's been an honor being here.
So,
Absolutely.
if you could leave the audience with just one word of advice, what would that be?
Um, I have lots of words of advice, but but today, because of where I am heading in the next week or so, my advice is to find a tribe, to find the people who will support you, who will cheer you on, who will motivate you, and have your back. Find those people. If you want to get ahead and you want to be different, and find the people who want the same differences as you do and the same changes.
Great words of wisdom. Great words of wisdom. And it all begins here, and reflect, right?
Mhm.
And you know who those are that will support you.
Mhm.
So go out and find that support. There you go. So, Tara, if people want to get a hold of you, what's the best way for them to reach you?
The best way to reach me is probably my website is, or Instagram. My website's livingahappierlife.ca. My Instagram is at living happier. No, it's not. It's at living a happier life. Um, my Facebook, I have a Facebook group. This week I'm opening up my membership for warrior women who have hit rock bottom and are ready to make a change and are looking for the how. So it's all up there. It's all in there.
Okay, living
Livingahappierlife.ca.
a happier life. So just Google living a happier life. You're going to find, remember this beautiful little face right here. She's here to give you a hand up. So reach out, reach out. There is a better way. So, Tara, it's time to say go out there, be that best you that you can be, because Tara and I, we are going to be the best we that we can be, right?
Yeah, that's what I work for every day, just being the best me I can be, living my best life. And it's working. I am.
There
Thank
we
you
go.
so much, Beverly. It's been so much fun.
Well, thank you, and thank you, audience, for listening. Let us know what you loved about Tara and this beautiful spirit and the direction she is helping all of us go by discovering the how and putting it into a direction and a way to get the results. We'll see you all on the next show.